Thank you so much for everybody joining. This is our first Wise Moon Wednesday of 2021. And I am so thrilled that you all have taken the chance to invest in yourselves this afternoon, much less with an expert in all things career, all things self-improvement and growth, the one and only Kristen Lampkin, HR guru. And I wanted to just give you a little bit of background on Kristen because she is just such a bright spot in our organization as she's kind of coming in and sharing all of her knowledge. But also she has got, a power squad behind her. I've heard so many things since we started talking about having her on here, people reaching out and saying, oh my gosh, of course you and Kristen are going to work together, that it just really brings me so much joy to have her here. Over the last 10 years, Kristen has worked in human resources, recruiting top talent. She knows the granular details it takes to have a standout resume and a strong LinkedIn profile. And so many of us really underestimate the value of what our personal brands and how they show up. And Kristen is going to be able to share with us just some tips and tricks today and more of a philosophy on how to approach our own personal brands as we are going out and trying to capture our dream jobs, or maybe even reaching out and applying for those awards or grants or showing up as business owners. Kristen is actually an active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and the Indianapolis Urban League of Young Professionals, who call themselves the Exchange. She previously served as Women for Change Coaching Community Board and the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the Indy SHRM Society for Human Resources Management Board. And so Kristen is located out of Indianapolis. And so I will have her share a little bit about herself and her background as we dive in. But Kristen, just thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We know that we're diving headfirst into 2021 and just so honored to have you spend your time with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be part of your platform. I've been so excited learning more and more about the opportunities that you present for women, and I'm all about empowering women. So I'm so excited to discuss this topic. I love talking about personal brand, and your resume and your LinkedIn are a big component of that. So thank you for having me today.
That's great. Well, and before we dive in, I want to just hear in your own words, let's tell us a little bit about Kristen. Who are you? What's up? Like, what's going on? Yeah.
So I am a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a boss babe, is what I like to say. I am the owner and CEO of HR Guru, LLC. And so what I do is help people, professionals, business owners, elevate their personal brand through their LinkedIn and resume. And so that is like my 5 to 2. My 9 to 5, I work in corporate America at CAR Global. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager. So those are a few things to tell you a little bit about me. Also, the other thing that I'm very proud about, especially with everything that took place last year, me and my girlfriend, Gabby, she lives in New York City. She's in Brazil right now, so jealous of her. But we have a podcast, and it's called Uncomfortable Conversations with Kristen Gabby. And so in our podcast, we discuss, what our goal is to normalize the conversation about race. I'm a Black woman, she's a white woman, and we have been friends since college. And one thing I can say is that during this time that we're in right now, and you see so much going on when it comes to race and gender, but really race right now, and we just really want to talk about it. And so I'm really proud about us launching that podcast last year. And we're on all platforms, so Apple to Spotify. So definitely go check that out. Again, it's Uncomfortable Conversations with Kristen Gabby. So that's Kristen. And I'm so excited to be.
That's incredible. And this is the perfect platform for that. We are always trying to welcome uncomfortable conversations because growth is uncomfortable. It's not something cozy, right? So, yeah. Gosh, I can't wait. We have so much more to talk about on that topic for sure.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, I would love to then dive in a little bit. Tell me more about your journey that led you to wanting to become an expert in this space in particular. So you talk
Mhm.
about your 5 to 2, right?
Yes.
I think that I can probably tell that story, right?
Yeah.
Through, it's with, built into you and you saw an opportunity, but I want to know the real story. Like
Yeah.
what area, what opportunity did you see to dive into this space?
So, ironically, I launched my business in last year, and what led to that is that I was invited to speak at a conference, and the conference was supposed to be in Vegas. It was a retail conference called Shop Talk. And the thing that really intrigued me about the conference, what happened, my mentor sent me this conference, was like, I think you would really think this is a really great thing. They are having all women speakers. And the reason why they're doing that is because they want to show that there are women in the retail space that are leading, because often it is male dominant. And I was like, this is really nice. And then I saw they were looking for speakers, and I was like, hey, I'm going to apply. What do I have to lose, right? I didn't do any background on like the previous speakers. I can talk about career development, resumes, and LinkedIn. I'm going to apply. So I applied, and then I got like an email like 3 hours later, and I was like, oh, wow. Didn't anticipate that. So then I started going and doing a little more research. And then I was like, all of the speakers that they have already are VP and above in their career. And I'm an individual contributor. I'm a senior, but I'm an individual contributor. So then I started having that imposter syndrome. Like, I don't deserve to do this. Like, why are they wanting to talk to me? And luckily I have such an amazing tribe of mentors and people that are rallying me, my husband, and they were like, because you're supposed to be there, Kristen. And so I appreciated them reminding me that when I kind of was going in my head, when I tell women not to do, I was doing myself, right? So I had the conversation. They were like, when they approached me, I thought that I was going to have to more sell myself, but they're like, no, we want you. We would love for you to come to the conference. My organization at the time, I was working at Finish Line's corporate office, was very supportive as well. And so I was selected to go. The conference was supposed to be in March 2020. As I'm sitting in my hairstylist chair, she's my friend and my hairstylist. And she's like, Kristen, you need to have a website, professional photos. You need to have you work on your brand, because like you said, there are a statue of women that are going to be there. So you just want to make sure you're ready to go. And I was like, sitting in her chair, like, okay, you just gave me anxiety. I was excited. Now I'm having anxiety. And she said, Kristen, relax. Don't think, just move. And that was the best advice that I could have ever received, because I was going to be checking my head out, like thinking I am not capable and that I can't do it. So that's what I did. I got professional photos done. I started working on my mission, started thinking about what I wanted to do, spoke with my mentors, and they were like, Kristen, you cover a lot of things. You can do a lot, but you have to be about realistic. What can you do that's not going to interfere with your 9 to 5? Right. And so I thought about it and I said LinkedIn and resumes. And so that's what led to the HR guru. And it's funny because every time I'm like, the HR guru, it's my personality. And so that led to me launching the business. Didn't know that in January that we were going to be going into a pandemic. And I'm grateful and blessed that I'm able to help so many people. I launched my business in January. I've had over 100 clients. And I always say that my clients aren't your clients necessarily looking for new opportunities. They're trying to stay ready so they don't have to get ready, because what the pandemic this year has taught us is that opportunities may come or they may be taken from us. And so I'm so grateful that I'm walking in my purpose. Majority of my clients are women, and I'm just glad that I'm able to make an impact. And so that is the story behind the HR Guru LLC being launched due to me being invited to speak at the conference. Unfortunately, the conference got moved again to September, but as we know, the pandemic didn't go away. So the conference got moved to next year. Now I'm not in that industry anymore, which we'll talk about. But yeah, so that's what led to the HR Guru.
I love that story because sometimes I think it's always important, especially for people who are thinking about starting a business. There's so many roads that one can take to starting a business. And sometimes it's 5, 10, 30 years that people are like, oh, obviously this is what I would do. And sometimes you see the moment, you see the opportunity, and you strike. And
Yes.
I think that that's what's so powerful about, like, there is no handbook about how to start a business. I do think that the words of wisdom that you are going to share with us today are
Yeah.
so powerful for anyone who is looking to start a business, looking to stay ready in their current career, maybe looking for new opportunities, and being able to just be able to show up as the best version of ourselves. As I said, I know most of the time that I've been proofing resumes, looking at LinkedIn, it's actually been more from an award standpoint. From
Yeah.
people are like, I really want to go and try to get some press around this great work that I'm doing. I'm like, well, your LinkedIn says that you still work as a sales associate at Abercrombie and Fitch. Like, so I don't think that that's accurate. I don't know. You
Mhm.
tell me. Do you still in wear Abercrombie Woods every day and show up to websites and websites? I don't think so. But I think that that's where, diving into this, I'm really excited about some tactical tips and just your overall approach to how we can show up better for ourselves so we can best advocate for ourselves when opportunities do come our way.
Agreed. Yes. And I think people underestimate the power of LinkedIn and their resume. So one of the things I did earlier, and I like to always share with people, like if you Google yourself, the first thing that comes up is not your website. It's not necessarily awards you received. It's your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
I did it with you. That's
Yeah.
the first thing that came up.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't realize that. So if someone's trying to research you or find out, like, let me put some hands in the chat if you hear me, if you've kind of had that experience, you just Googled yourself, that's what came up if you have a LinkedIn profile. Yes, yes, Diane. Yes, exactly. So people don't realize that that is the first impression before someone may interact with you is your resume or LinkedIn to get you in the door for a job opportunity, get you an award, get you on a board. Those are the things, this is part of your personal brand. And so it is essential that you want to make sure, what you brought up is so key, is that your resume and your LinkedIn have the most up-to-date information. Because again, it's a reflection of who you are. When you're not in the room and someone's like brings your name up, I mean, think about it. We're all guilty of this. Someone brings a name up for something, we Google. We're Googling the person. We're going on their Instagram. We're going on, you may Facebook, you may go Google, like looking to see what is the makeup of that person? What can I find out? And so the great thing about your resume, one of my mentors, Barbara Mason, she's coined this wonderful phrase. Your resume and your LinkedIn are brothers and sisters, not twins. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they'll take the information from their resume and put that exact information on LinkedIn when that's not the case. And so that is another tip I want to give you also. Make sure you have the most up-to-date information. Make sure that you also don't copy your complete resume and put that onto your LinkedIn. The one thing that I love about LinkedIn is that it allows you to be seen in a way that your resume may not allow you to see. So one thing I want to talk about is referrals. So when you apply for a job, you put a referral down. I always tell people, think about this. You call the person hoping in good faith this is who they are. But it could be their mom, it could be their dad, it could be their cousin, it could be their brother, right? Well, the unique thing about LinkedIn is there's an area on there where you can get recommendations. And this is connected to a profile. So this is a real person. You can see this person, where they work, there, learn a little bit more about them and their character. And so one of the things I want to challenge you all with is in spending this quarter, so Q1, we're the kickoff, trying to get at least 2 to 3 recommendations. So those recommendations can come from someone that you sat on a board with, a peer, a previous leader, a classmate. There's lots of individuals that you've worked with. The one thing is they do have to be your friend on LinkedIn, and they have to be on LinkedIn. So they have to be part of your network. And so what that does, again, allows build your credibility for you as an individual. Another thing that I'm going to also recommend is that you also make sure that you have at least minimum 500 people in your network. That sounds overwhelming at first when I say that, but that is the recommendation that LinkedIn has for you. And the reason for that is because it, again, builds your credibility. It builds your network. I always tell people before you apply for a job, if before you apply for in a board position or anything, it's important to see who in your network is connected to that organization, because then that helps you have an advocate and someone that can truly advocate for you when you're not in the room, or advocate for you when they know, oh, I know Kristen Lampkin applied for this opportunity, a board seat. I've worked with her previously. Again, utilizing that for you to help you in your next opportunity. The reason why I like to share that is because I actually started a new opportunity. Like I mentioned, I'm at Car Global. I started in September. Guess what? I never applied for the job. The VP found me on LinkedIn. Okay. And so the importance of having your profile really holistically show you is essential. My titles that I've had in previous roles in my organizations were never diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what I did make sure is I made sure all the organizations where I've done work in that was on my profile. So listing volunteering, listing organizations that I was on boards with, making sure that my profile section that says about me called out all of the things I've done in that space. So that's how I was able to show up in her searches, because I had that in my profile. Although my direct title never reflected that, she saw that I was doing that work. So always remember, sometimes your job may not give you the direct experience on a day-to-day basis, but you have other experiences that make you stand out. And so I want to make sure that you all understand the value of LinkedIn and that it plays. And so I hope that was kind of good to give you some color. And then your resume. I mean, think about it. People ask for your resume. They're right in front of you. Oh, send me your resume. If you don't have your resume good to go, you may miss out on the next opportunity that you have for you, whether it's in a board seat or a volunteering or a job opportunity. So you want to make sure that you have those things updated. I know it sounds overwhelming at first, but what I recommend is you updating that at least once a quarter.
And Kristen,
so then if there's any,
I'm going to ask you a question really quick.
Yes.
In regards to intentionality.
Yes.
Because it sounds like you had made the decision that you, because of the work that you previously did, maybe not professionally, but maybe through organizations, you wanted to enter the diversity and inclusion space. And therefore, you tailored your LinkedIn profile, and you're going to talk a little bit about your resume, but you tailored the content to fit that. Is that what I understand?
Correct. So in my day-to-day job, it was part of my responsibility, but it wasn't my entire responsibility.
Yes.
And so you're right. I had to be very intentional of making sure that if this is the area in the space that I'm passionate about and that I want to do work in, that on my LinkedIn and on my resume, I made sure the things that I've done in that space was very much called out. So any key responsibilities, any projects I've done, anything that I enhanced, developed, created, any board seats that I had, any milestones that I achieved, I made sure that that was reflected on my resume and my LinkedIn. So if someone saw, they're like, well, she hasn't had that direct title, but they see that I had that experience. Because often we don't realize that skills are transferable, right? And so I have a lot of my clients who are like, I want to break into a new industry, but I don't think I'm capable of it. And then I have them reflect, okay, let's look at that job description, right? Are those the key skills they're looking at? Collaborations, team building, leadership, strategic thinking. Have you demonstrated those? So let's walk through and see how we can make sure that's you're speaking that in your resume and your LinkedIn. Because we all know as women, we just do what we do. Like sometimes it's hard for us to reflect back on, how did I show up? How did I contribute? And so one thing that helps me do that is that I keep track of the things I do a quarter so that I don't forget the things that I've accomplished, because it's easy to do that. And so that's another recommendation I have for you all. And you know what I do? I share that with my leader. I tell her that, you know, this does not require a response. I just want to let you know the things that I've been working on from professionally and personally that impacts my role.
That's awesome. I love that. And I know we're going to dive in just to tie a bow on that. The one thing that I see, especially when people are feeling like they're drowning or they don't know what to do. What I see so many members of our community in particular do is they say, well, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to, and they just start applying, right? They want their LinkedIn or their resume to be as broad as possible. And I think that that's the you're doing the wrong action. You're not spending time actually thinking about, what do I really want to do? And I know that that's a conversation for another day, and really finding what it is that you know, what you want to achieve and the direction you want to go. But I just thought it was worth mentioning that I think that that's so spectacular when you can finally identify, at least generally speaking, the type of role that you want. Then you can look at the job descriptions, multiple, right? So you can reach a broader audience and bring it in that way. So that's wonderful.
And I agree 100% with you. You know, one of the things my mentor, he recommended that I do is that I kept a book for like 3 months and I wrote down anything that energized me, anything that I enjoy doing. Instead of looking at titles, started writing down personally and professionally, what is that? And for me, I realized I was fueled by people. And so I agree with you. Sometimes it's easy to think, okay, I'll just go broad. And as a recruiter, when I recruited, I would have someone that applied for 5 different jobs. And it's like, okay, where do you want to go? Like, you know, what job do you really want? So you have to also think about, how is that showing up for an organization that you may be inquiring about? If you're applying for IT, for communication, for marketing, for systems, you have to think about, how does that show that you really know what you want? And if you don't, then maybe you need to spend time, instead of applying, thinking of what you really want to do. So I appreciate you bringing that point up.
That's great. And you were starting to step into the conversation on resumes a little bit. And so we know that LinkedIn and your resume are siblings. Is that what you said?
No, yes, siblings,
so
exactly.
They're not twins, they're siblings. And so as we think about the resume itself and the structure of the resume, I know that there are, gosh, so many resources out there of the right way to write one and what people are looking for. We know different industries have different things. Do we write a cover letter? Do we not? I would just love your perspective on, like, what are the bones of this thing that this archaic thing that we need, this necessary evil, rather.
Yes. And I tell people this: you send your resume to someone, everyone's going to have a critique of how to fix it because everyone has different perceptions of what they want or need. As a recruiter, I only looked at cover letters when someone was applying and it didn't seem like they matched up. So maybe they could tell me a story through their cover letter. But the reality is that recruiters don't spend more than like 6 seconds looking at a resume, 6 seconds. So think about the time that that they have. So the one key thing that I think a lot of people have gotten to is making their resume super pretty and having all these tables in them. And I tell people that old school is the best way. So you want to make sure you're using, make sure you're using current font, not like, the new age modern, where people put their photos on there. And I always say, if you put your photo on your resume, only time it really applies is if you're applying to be a model for an agency or you're an actor. That's when it's valuable. They can see that by adding a link to your LinkedIn. They can see that information on you, right? And so that's one of the things I want to make sure. But there are different types of resumes. And one of the things I want to share with you all too, I have 2 ebooks. And so I am going to let you all know that I have a promotional code to offer you all to help you as well. And one of my ebooks is Resume Tips from the HR Guru. And so there it goes into depth about the 4 different resume types, depending on where you are. So you maybe have a target resume where you want to look more focusing on the things you've accomplished because you may have had gaps in your employment, maybe you took a break from working. And then the most popular one is the chronological resume. And so that is one that, if you Google, there's only one way to really go about it. But one thing I tell people is that you want to make sure that the information on your resume, this is one of the biggest mistakes people make, is that they put the entire job description for each one of their jobs on their resume. That doesn't tell me what you've done. That doesn't tell me what you've contributed. That doesn't tell me what you've created, enhanced, developed. So it's good to have some of those things from your job description, but you really want to focus on what you've done for the organization and sit back and think about how you showed up in your role. The other thing I want to point out too is, like I mentioned, making sure you have a link for your LinkedIn on your resume under your email. Again, takes people to learn more about you. That's why you don't want them to be twins, because that is something you want to show people later. The other thing that I'll point out too about resumes, it was on the tip of my tongue that you brought up a point and I wanted to make sure I covered it. Resumes should not be more than 2 pages. So, I have worked a lot with a lot of my clients. Some of them have been working in their field for over 25 years, and that's so great. But think about it. 25 years ago, what you did, does it apply now? Right? So I recommend not going back further than 15 years when it comes to your job history.
And so it's so interesting because I know that I come from my background. When we would do recruiting, we were looking for a lot of data because humans apparently love numbers and we want to hear like the quantifiable pieces.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a lot of empaths we're storytellers too, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about things that should be tactically on your resume versus what can kind of come out in the story as you're talking about the context, action, and resolution of that experience in the interview itself, should you land it.
Yes. So one of the things that I tell people, if you put everything on your resume, what is that going to lead for the discussion in the actual interview? So similar to what you said, one of the things I did with the Indianapolis Urban League, I was part of the council that helped nominate individuals for awards throughout the city. So 40 under 40, women influence. And so we spent time understanding what they were looking for, because we noticed that there was a low representation of people of color and women. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing our part of nominating people for those awards. And one of the things I'll tell you, the people that were getting those awards and nominated, they were being sure to tell the story of, okay, I saved the organization $1 million, right? So you put that fact on there, that leads to the conversation. Okay, later in the interview, how did you get to that? Like, what steps did you take? And so you want to make sure that you are providing those quantitative and those quantitative numbers, as well as also the things that you've done in the role, so that it can lead to a conversation later. And so it's important that you do put them in a certain order instead of just like throwing all of your bullet points out there. You want it to be a story that they can be able to uncover. Okay, so I see that you, in your role, that you were in charge of strategic planning for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tell me some of the strategies that you implemented. So that, again, think about how you can tell your story through the information that's on your resume. Yeah. And I think that you're right. The storytelling part, when I used to interview people, I didn't want to have an interview where I'm like very structured. I want to get to know the person where they feel comfortable sharing and learning more about them, because at the end of the day, you want to work with people that you know are going to be able to tell your story as an organization, right? And be able to be part of that story and that journey.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think that is the flexibility that per your industry, I love that you've created a tool for people to be able to download and really understand that there are different needs for different spaces. And so that is really fantastic. And
it's not a one size fits all. Like it's not,
I think that it is. I love the 2-page rule. I have to tell you, I've reviewed so many resumes over the last 6 months that had been like 6 pages, and I'm like, girl, you're 28. Like, we don't need to know that you played high school lacrosse.
Yes.
Walker, like, thank you, but like not relevant here. I think that
I agree. I agree 100%. You see that happen often. And so you have to think about, what is this relevancy? Like, is this relevant to the role I'm applying for? Yeah. And that's why I say it's important to go back once a quarter, because you may need to add new information, right? And so the most relevant experience that you have is going to have more context compared to the things you did 15 years ago.
Yeah, and so we have 2 questions that came to me. Yes. One is, what about bios versus resumes? So if you're a consultant and you are looking to send information to clients, what's the role of those two pieces?
Yes. So I think those are two different things. You're right. So if you're a consultant and you're trying to get work with an organization, I definitely think you should provide a bio, so they can get to know you and learn more about your experiences and what you've offered. So in that case, yes. When you're applying for a job, again, I don't think that's, again, added paper that's not going to be necessary, that the recruiter more than likely is not going to review. Bios are definitely a very important part of your personal brand, because, again, you talked about people applying for awards. That's part of that package. I'm sure that they had a bio included in there, and that it really gets to show them as a holistic person and getting to know that individual. So I do see bios. I definitely agree that that is part of your personal brand as well, and that it does has a place, not necessarily when you're applying for jobs, but if you are consulting and doing work, it definitely does play a role.
No, I love that. And if anybody's looking for a good read, Story Mythos by Shane Meeker, he's a colleague of mine. He largely talks about storytelling and like the arc of movies, like the hero's journey, as being a way to tell really great stories, specifically about innovation. But I found it really good for my personal pitch. So, like, what's the quick elevator speech about me? It's not lost on me that I am very long-winded, and so I have to consciously like reel myself in to tell my story quickly. So if anybody's looking for that, I would be happy to send that out with the recap from this. The other question that came in from Maggie was, should we take off categories like leadership, service, extracurricular activities, things that you did in college? And I think it just brings up a good point. At what point do you start to lose things on your resume that maybe, so I'll give you an example. I read a resume a couple weeks ago of somebody who is a physician and somebody
Yes.
who has done an immense amount of work as a physician, but they were applying for an award and they haven't really done a lot of extracurriculars
Mm,
since college, because guess what? Like, they've been busy learning to be a physician. And so
yeah.
I'd love to know your perspective on like what do you
Yes.
keep, what do you not keep, based on what you might be applying for in that
Mhm.
regard.
So in regards to college, if it hasn't been in the last, I would say 3 to 5 years, I wouldn't include it. And that's just because, again, it's outdated information.
Yeah.
On my resume, I have civic involvement. And so it talks a little bit about, so that covers any memberships that I have, any leadership roles that I've had. So there is value, but I think it's very important to think about, when did that take place? Like, if you are 10 years removed from college, and you have high school stuff on there, it doesn't really show your recent things that you've contributed to the world, right? And so I think that's fair, but it does have a place. Like I said, my resume is 2 pages, and it does include my leadership and civic engagement on there.
That's
And
great.
then people ask about putting dates on their actual resume. And so one of the things I tell people is that we know that people are not supposed to discriminate, right? But people have biases, right? And they show up. And so one of the things I tell people, if it's been 5 years since you've been in college, it is a good opportunity to take away those dates off of your resume as well when it comes to your graduation dates. Again, people have biases that show up. Unfortunately, we all have biases. So I just want to make sure that people aren't age discriminated against when they're applying for opportunities. And so I always am candid with candidates about that.
No, I love that. I love that feedback. I think that it's such a shift from, what you learn. And as I think we've learned so much about, even within artificial intelligence, we know that a lot of these are going through a screening process probably before they even land on people's plates. And so I think that being able, just like you said with LinkedIn, being able to make sure that you're plugging in a lot of those skills that are transferable
Yes.
into your into the explanations of the work that you did in a really tangible way, making sure that you're aligning with that. But I want to talk for a minute. Angela had mentioned on cover letter. I know that you had said some people may or may not read a cover letter.
Yes.
They're going to spend 6 seconds on it.
Yes.
If you were going to write a cover letter, what would be the reason why? Like, why would you want to make sure that you added it?
Yes. So I find cover letters valuable if there's gaps in your employment. So, for instance, my husband used to work in the industry in post-secondary schools. So they like schools would shut down like every 2 years. So it looks like he was job hopping, but that was his industry, right? And so then that kind of was difficulty transitioning into new industries because people would be like, you job hop. But that wasn't the case, right? The other area, like say you took time off from work to take care of a loved one or to be a homemaker, whatever that may be, being able to kind of share your journey and your story of what you've done during the time that you do see that there's a gap in your employment. Did you volunteer? Did you do consulting work? What kind of you did you go back to school? Just allowing people to understand that. So gaps, if you've taken off a time from work, if there is a huge shift in industries that you're going into, that there's going to be some skills that maybe they don't know that you have gained, utilizing it for those purposes. But there is value in cover letters, but it's just being mindful of when it should be used. Like I said, I didn't look at, if I saw somebody's experience and they was attached to the role, I didn't really look at cover letters. I mean, over 100 people apply for a role. The reality is every application is not looked at.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure that you're giving concise and precise information.
No, I love that. There's a question here on the resume. What are your views on years? So let's say 2020 versus month/year. So December 2020. Some had mentioned that adding months makes it look more junior. Do you have a perspective?
So I think it depends on also the individual. So I have had clients that do a lot of consulting work. So they did projects. So if they did 20, it'd be 2020. And then that looks like they didn't have a lot of experience, right? So them saying March 2020 to December 2020 has value.
Sure.
So my resume just has years because I have been at organizations for longer than 2 years. So I'll do years, but I do see values adding the month. It's not necessarily junior, depends on like what your industry is.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say this gets into another just thought for me on, I think that there's flexibility depending on, you want to show up as your best self. You never want to be not truthful, but I know we've had conversations on job titles too.
Yes.
Right? So there are some industries where, for example, like when I worked at Procter and Gamble, I, as a senior manager, was doing the job of a senior director or vice president at some companies, right? But like it didn't quite level. And so I'd love to know just your philosophy on like how much is truth, like where are the wiggle rooms and flexibilities, I guess, because like I'm never gonna fudge on a telling like hard facts on things because like that's just not ethical.
Yes, exactly.
But where does it come in terms of like other things, I guess?
So what I recommend, because I've been in that seat, I've worked for organizations where I've wore multiple hats, and maybe the work I was doing was considered individual within my org, but if I went somewhere else, it was director level work.
Yeah.
So one thing I think is utilizing the space where you describe the work that you've done and you're doing to really give more context around it. Because for me, I looked at titles, but I wanted to see more what the person did. Because I've seen, I have had people that have had recruiting in their title, but they really didn't recruit, right? They were doing more administrative work and they were screening, but they didn't do full cycle recruiting. So I think it's important to utilize the space of describing what you do. People get wrapped up in titles. Titles matter, but they don't at the same time. And so that's why you want to use the space of describing the work you've done and to really be able to articulate that if it's, at a higher level. In every industry is varied, like every company varies, and that's a fact too within industries too, right? So the structure may vary. So it's really important to make sure, one of the questions was like, what's advice to make your resume stand out? Having strong content on there of what you've done and what you've accomplished, not what the team did, but what did you do? What is your role? What project did you lead? What did you enhance or develop? And that goes back to answering your question as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think you're right. Like, let your work speak for itself, but make
Yeah.
sure that you're doing it the service that it needs to. Make sure you're including that quantitative
Yes.
information. And
Mhm.
that's part of too, you had mentioned that you document your accomplishments per quarter. I
Yes.
think that's something that we could probably start maybe prompting people as an organization, is
Yes.
to say, we always ask people what their wins are, but we never quite ask people to say, like, hey, have you updated your resume? Have you
Yes.
updated your LinkedIn? Like, have you
Yes.
captured those things? Because guess what? The tyranny of the urgent will take the space of those, that, and the ability to celebrate. Um,
Yes.
I know that anytime I update my resume and I go back to it, somebody asks me for it and I'm like, oh shoot. Like, and I have to hurry up and like get it done. And then like I send it out and I'm like, oh, I forgot these 5 things. It's also really like a good ego boost for me.
Yeah.
To be like, dang girl, you've got a lot of good stuff
You like, I did that.
I know, like this is great. I mean, I don't know. Like, if nobody else is doing it
Yes.
for you, you might as well do it for yourself. I
Because
mean,
we're so hard on ourselves that we don't reflect. We sense, like, one of the things for me, my word for this year is embrace, right? So embracing everything. We're always catching, trying to go to the next thing, but like, let's embrace the moment we're in, embrace the things that I've accomplished, really kind of reflect on that. And so that's why I think doing that once a quarter really allows you to reflect back on, okay, how well did I do? What did I work on? And what else that helps you with is if you have review time come. I remember one time, what was my lesson was I was like, oh, I didn't do that. I had this as a goal for mine, but I didn't accomplish it. And my peer was like, yeah, you did. Remember when you did this? And I said, you know what? That's why I need to go back to keeping track of the things I accomplished each quarter.
well, Felicia's on here. She doesn't know anything about that. When we worked together at a prior organization, she would be like, oh, and I'm like, no, like you not only did it, you exceeded expectations. And oh
Exactly.
yeah, I forgot, because you just get going, right?
Exactly. So
So
that's why it's great to keep track of that, and allows you to see, oh, okay, I didn't get this done. Let me make sure I make that a focus for Q2.
yeah, no, I love that. And it's also, I think, you can build it as advocacy for
Yes.
others, right? So I think that by being able to share your accomplishments, you now have another ambassador to be able to speak your praises and to be able to talk about the things that I think sometimes, like, we as women are. This is one key thing that I wanted to chat with you about with LinkedIn that I've gotten some
Yes.
feedback on, that I could talk about this for hours. And it's about this issue that we have with standing on a pedestal and
Mhm.
being and singing our own praises.
Yeah.
And there, especially in the Midwest, we know that we have a very like, humility is seen as
Yes.
very sexy, and
Mhm.
people are like, oh, she's so humble, she's so
Mhm.
selfless, like. And so
Mhm.
I used to nudge my friends and say, hey, like, will you shout me out on this thing that I did? And now I just go straight to it and post it, and I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
here's this thing that I did. But I know that that's not always embraced with warm and fuzzy feelings from
Yeah.
other people. And I know if you do it a lot, people can see you as being maybe not humble enough.
Mhm.
LinkedIn in general, I think, gets that rap sometimes. People don't
Mhm.
really, they see it only as a place where people go to brag and not
Mhm.
necessarily as a place to network. I want to know your philosophy on the platform itself, and
Mhm.
what do you use LinkedIn for?
Mhm.
How can we maybe use LinkedIn better to be able
Yeah.
to build a really great community of women that can support one another?
Definitely. LinkedIn, I always tell people, because I spoke with creators. They're like, there's no place for me. I've spoke with influencers. There's no place for me on LinkedIn. And there's a place for everyone on LinkedIn, because you just mentioned, like you said, women, you can target your audience by using, similar to social media, hashtags. I've had clients find me through hashtags. And so people don't realize that that's a way to do that. And going back to what you said about people thinking about bragging, one time someone shared with me, was like, someone was complimenting me, and I was like, and this was in high school, and I was like, oh, dude, no. She's like, no, you take that compliment. You say thank you, because listen, you don't know who you may be impacting and influencing and giving someone the courage to do that. And so what I recognize is that everything we do is beyond us. It's to help others, right? The work that we do, the things we're accomplishing allows other women to know I can do that too. I see myself in you, right? And so I encourage you all, when you get an award, when you've accomplished something, when you're speaking somewhere, share that on your social media, share that on LinkedIn, because it may inspire another woman to know that she can do that too, seeing you do that. I think about all the women that I admire and that I've aspired to do and be, and seeing them do it allow me to know like I can do that too, by seeing myself in them in similarities based off of our profiles. So that's one thing I want to touch on there. Another thing is utilizing it as, there's LinkedIn Learning. People don't know about LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning has every topic you can think of, from working on empathy, working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they have a free 30 days, but guess what? If you have a library card, you can actually get LinkedIn for free, learning for free. And so a lot of people don't know that. And then there's another resource, having a library card, where you can get books that you can rent and listen to, so audibles, through your library card. So there's value in that. And I can share that resource with you later so that you can share with the rest of the group. But yeah, so LinkedIn Learning, so much value there. The other thing too is sharing knowledge in articles. So it allows you to be shown as a credible and an expert in your area, right? And so if you see an article that other people in your network, share that, because again, our purpose is to help others, right? I know that's something we all probably have in common on the line, is that we want to see, especially women, succeed and see women really walk in their true purpose, in the light they're supposed to be in. This is what the community of Wise is, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing that, right? And so doing that by sharing, again, articles, that's one way that people don't realize, again, building your credibility. Also, if you're looking for someone to join a board or join your organization, sharing that you're looking for someone on there. If you have a job, you don't have to have the higher level recruiting seat. You can share that on your personal pages, especially if you want to bring diversity to your organization and want to see more women. That's a way to get it out, right? Again, targeted network there. And again, building your network. If there's a job you want to apply for, I say always go and see if you know someone that works there first. One of my friends works for an organization. They get like almost, I think, $1,500 for a referral. Referrals go so much further. I think about my last 3 opportunities. I landed the job, but one of the ways that I helped get myself in the door was using my network of someone that I knew worked there, except for this last opportunity.
I think that's such an important layer to think about, when you, because a lot of people, I think of it as like an alternative to, it's like Facebook but for my career. Mm-hmm. and I don't think that that's necessarily the right way to think about it. I think about it as like the best place for you to possibly show up, whether you are thinking about making a transition. I know that there's a lot of people who have been impacted by job eliminations during this pandemic. A lot of women who have left the workforce to care for others.
Yeah.
I love your push on LinkedIn Learning, because we know that there are organizations like Reserve Squad that if you are leaving the workforce and you are looking to stay connected, Reserve Squad can help you do that. But LinkedIn Learning is another, sounds like, free resource, as long as you are a library card member.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Some people pay for it, but I always like to let people know about free resources, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then I think, as we think about all of these life transitions, I do think that, the one beautiful part, you can do this anytime, but we are at the beginning of the year. Yes. And it's a new beginning. It's fresh.
Exactly.
I talk about 2021. I've said this a couple times, but I really love the metaphor. It's like a fine aged bottle of wine. We're going to open it up and we're just going to let it breathe for a little bit, right?
Yes.
Like doing this whole thing we do year after year, where we're like, 2021, hit the ground running. Let's like go do this and go ham and burn ourselves out. This year is the year that we're going to really be thoughtful. So I would love to just kind of closing this out a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
hear from you. You'd mentioned your intention.
Yes.
It was embrace. I
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about a little bit about intentionality in terms
Yes.
of like prioritization for if we are going to go into this and make first steps and strides. What
Yes.
do you think is the number one recommendation you would have for people leaving today?
So I would say my number one recommendation, and this is for LinkedIn in general or just, okay. So my number one recommendation is to breathe. Because anytime we start new things, we often feel overwhelmed and realize that it's a journey. You don't need to go in and get 500 friends tomorrow. You can't anyway, because LinkedIn only allows you to like request 100 people in general, I think initially, per week. And so they only let you do a certain amount per week because they want to make sure bots and fake pages don't come about. But I think one of the key things is know it's a journey. So don't feel like you have to feel overwhelmed as you're starting this journey. One of the things too, like I said, I'm going to offer you all, I have a 7-day LinkedIn challenge, because again, often we want to rush to do things instead of progressing to do that. And so it literally gives you tips on what to start, where to start, what does that look like, where can I update. But the first thing I want us to start with is your about section. So how you want people to learn about you, right? That is important. People will add their information, their job and everything, but they forget that about section, where that allows you a time to really shine. So I think it's very important to be intentional with this year of knowing I'm going to focus on enhancing or developing my LinkedIn page. And I'm going to allow myself to really embark in this community and build my network so that I can continue to show myself in the light that I want others to see me in, knowing that if you Google me, this is what's going to come up first.
No,
Yes.
I think that that's fantastic. And making sure that no matter where you are on your journey, would love your perspective on how to message where you are.
Yes.
So if you, I know that at one time LinkedIn let you do like I'm looking or I'm open or if my role's been eliminated and like I explaining that versus like I got fired. How
Yes.
is that the space to do that, or do you let people find that out later?
So the LinkedIn did add 2 different things now. You can show on your page, you'll see a green around people that says open to work. I don't recommend that. To me, it's like, hello, see me. Yeah. I need to be seen. I think that it's okay to do it the behind the scenes way where recruiters see that you show up, because sometimes, unfortunately, again, this goes back to people's biases and where I've seen it show up in the recruiting and interviewing process. You don't want to give anyone the opportunity not to realize, yes, I'm looking right now, but guess what? COVID happened. Yeah. And I want everyone to know that organizations recognize this and know that organizations are hiring. And it's a good time starting the year off now because budgets open up, right? So new positions are added, and maybe people are going for other opportunities. But I just shared, I got an opportunity during COVID. My husband joined Amazon. He didn't apply. Guess what? They found him on LinkedIn as well. And that was during COVID. So yes, utilize LinkedIn. You can say that, right now I'm in transition. My position was eliminated. That's a way that you can describe what's going on. And in that time, I have spent time focusing on project management and learning and enhancing my skills, whatever that may look like. So that's one way for you to be able to articulate that in a way where it's not seen as see me. It may be see me, because everyone needs an opportunity, but you want to be strategic in that and approaching it too within having coffee conversations with people via Zoom. Yeah. Hey, I would love to take some time, and speak with you. I noticed that you work at so-and-so and would love to hear how your experience has been there.
No, I think that's so smart. My last plug for you would be for anybody watching this, please just do a quick gander at your LinkedIn photo and make sure that it's not a photo from a bar, or make sure that it's not like a sexy selfie. Like that's great and all, but and it doesn't also have to be like a professional photo, right? Like
exactly. Go against a white wall. Go against the wall and put on a nice blouse or a blazer. I tell my clients, they're like, well, I said, listen, you have a blank wall. Yes. Go against the wall, put on a shirt and tie, put on a blazer, put on whatever shows your personality in there. Because it's only half up. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be a full body.
Exactly. I know. I've just seen so many that I'm like, oh, everything's right, but this photo is so, so wrong. So
Yes.
I think that this is amazing. Well, I know that we're coming up on time. So any last so it's I thank you so much, Kristen, for coming here today. First off, I feel like we could talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about because I think that this is something completely within our control. We can own wholly and within a very short amount of time see a huge improvement. So make sure that you check out, and they're in the chat here. We will also add them to our newsletter this week that will come out. Make sure that you check out KristenLampkin.com. The client code is client with a capital C 21. And on your website, it looks like you've got a lot of different tools that you can check out in terms of LinkedIn, resume, and a lot of other really fantastic resources. Where can people find you on social media?
Yes, so you can go to HR Guru LLC and so on there I'm always sharing different tips. So every day I post. So I talk about interviewing, LinkedIn, resume, skill sets. So I cover everything when it comes to career advice. And so again, I go by the HR Guru, and so HR Guru LLC, and that is on Facebook as well as on Instagram.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much again. And everyone, I hope that your 2021 is starting off with a very slow, easy transition. Like I said, I normally say a bang, but I think we're going to ease into this a little bit. Make sure that you check us out tomorrow evening. We have an event with Whitney Ellison on the 7 Universal Laws. Next Tuesday, we have our vision boarding workshop that is for free with Rachel DeRochers. All of those seats might be sold out, but there is a wait list. So if you're interested and you cannot get on that, please reach out to me. Next Wednesday, we have Dr. Adame Casada from the Christ Hospital. We're going to be talking all things research and how women are very under-researched right now and how that leads to a disproportionate number of misdiagnoses for women in our health. So, Kristen, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have this time with you, and really looking forward to seeing the amazing things that we can do together in the future. But
thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.